On this week's podcast, John and I talk with Bob Ricks, the special agent in charge of the investigation of the Oklahoma City bombing.
Bald,
Blind,
and buddies.
Timmy C., how are you today, pal?
Good. I'm happy on this going to be Labor Day weekend, established since 1894 by Grover Cleveland.
I did not know that.
Yeah, there you go.
I did not know that. That's an interesting fact.
Yeah.
I do know that Bill Clinton designated the second, I read this recently, the second most national parks after Teddy Roosevelt. So,
wow.
Just a random stupid fact. There
Yeah.
you go. Yeah. Now, was it just a celebration of labor? Is that essentially what it was?
Yeah, and it's also in September to separate it from the Communist Socialist May 1st Workers' Day. So
You're kidding me, really?
No, yeah. Well, there were efforts to not have it on that day for those reasons. So,
sometimes you should be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it, as they say. In the end of the Cold War, really ushered in sort of a tremendous amount of uncertainty and unease and all these sorts of things, because it was really easy for, even in hindsight, for 45, 50 years, because whatever the Russians did, we did the opposite, and vice versa.
Yeah.
They said go up, we said go down. They said go left, we said go right. It didn't matter what it was. It was just do the opposite. Very easy to strategize foreign policy from that perspective, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, we need a nemesis and we need an enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've said this 1,000 times. I think it was Thomas Jefferson or Benjamin Franklin, that the curse of American policy is slaying dragons, and absent one, we have to create it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. But that being said, Timmy, I am extraordinarily excited about our next guest, because it's very rare that you can have someone on who has lived history as profound as he has. We are about to introduce Mr. Bob Ricks. Most famously, he was the special agent in charge of the Oklahoma City bombing that ultimately, captured and put to death Timothy McVeigh, and obviously put Terry Nichols away. And now Michael Fortier is out of prison, but he is in the witness protection plan. He was formerly, he had been an FBI agent for 30 plus years, became the chief of police of Enid, Oklahoma. This is also a first, Timmy, because it's going to be our first two-part interview. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, we thought we'd break it up so that, we could spread it over time, so it's not too long. We're aiming for about a 40-minute podcast these days. So
yeah, and I have to tell you, I could have listened to Mr. Ricks for 2 more hours. I just was fascinated.
Yeah.
And so this first part that we're introducing is his talking about how he graduated from Baylor, went to law school, was having tons of fun being an FBI agent, and never thought about being a lawyer, and then ultimately how he ended up in the FBI, and it leads into Waco. Next week, we'll talk about Oklahoma City and Timothy McVeigh. Is that a fair dichotomy, Tim? Is that where the point is?
And I think Waco needs to be understood as a precedent, at least in Timothy McVeigh's mind, for Oklahoma City. So I think it's a good place to break it.
Yep. And Mr. Ricks calls out that he was very nervous on April 19th, 1994. And then when he saw it was April 19th, 1995, because that was the 2-year anniversary of Waco, and Timothy McVeigh most famously was there, you can understand that is a problematic day for the FBI. But a fabulous gentleman. And without further ado, let's introduce Mr. Ricks, Tim. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Well, it's a pleasure being here. Thanks for asking me.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Ricks, tell us a little bit about how you ended up in the FBI. And if memory serves, you're from Texas originally, sir, and now you're living in Oklahoma. I mean, do people from Texas even talk to you after that? I mean, that's kind of that's going to the enemy territory, isn't it, sir?
Well, a little bit, but it was, part of a career advancement that I was actually sent to Oklahoma. I grew up in Texas, and still have great affinity for the state, and most of my family still resides in Texas, so it's still very dear to my heart.
How did you end up with the FBI? And before I forget, I have to embarrass you a little bit and call out my sister-in-law. You are a proud Baylor Bear graduate, right? You played golf for them, and my sister-in-law, Jenny, is a Baylor graduate, and I call that out because, just real quickly, sir, I find it distinctly unfair that, being as big a sports fan as I am, that my wife, who's a Villanova grad, and my sister-in-law, who's a Baylor grad, have between them 3 national titles in basketball in the last 10 years.
and Notre
Yeah.
Dame hasn't won anything in 37 years. So I just find that to be unjust. You're in the FBI. Fix that
Yeah.
injustice, sir.
Well, we are proud of particularly our women's basketball program. They were phenomenal, and hopefully we can regain that back again. But of course, then our men's basketball also won a national championship, and that was really a great honor for Baylor. But back to your question about how did I get into the FBI? I was going to school during the Vietnam War, and we we had a little thing called the draft back then that was facing everyone that was getting ready to graduate. And I was in law school, and had an FBI agent that I had known previously. I grew up in a Mexican border town called Del Rio, and he had been stationed at Del Rio and then got transferred to Waco. And he used to come out and watch me play in golf matches that I had against other schools in the Southwest Conference. And about my second year in law school, he asked me to fill out an application and basically said it would help him with certain requirements that he had to perform. He had to recruit so many people, or at least get in applications. And if I would fill out, it would help him. I had really not a great intention of going into the FBI. My plan was to go into the National Guard, spend my term there, and then go into a law firm there in Texas or some other firm. I'd been offered a position on the Texas Supreme Court as a clerk, which was an avenue into better jobs back then. I assume it's probably still the same, but you had to be a good student, which I fortunately was, and so I was offered that position as well. But because of politics, they changed the requirements for the Guard, and they had to do some political favors for certain people, and they actually turned the seniority list upside down to get certain people favors that they owed them. And so instead of being on the top of the list where I was signed up for an airborne unit, I now was no longer at the top, and I'm getting ready to graduate law school, and so I had to make a decision. I came close to signing on as a JAG officer with the Army, but the FBI agent, he said, you get a deferment if you go in the FBI. He said, let me see where you are there. Said, don't sign anything yet. He came back and said, had gotten to the top of the list in the FBI and could report there. So I had to make that decision on what to do. So I signed a 3-year contract with the FBI, thinking that that would be it, and I'd come back out and go back into a law firm. But it turned out that 3 years turned into 26 years of a career.
What kept you?
What kept me?
Yeah.
Good question. I was stationed in California. I served in 4 cities in California: Sacramento, Yuba City, Los Angeles, and Riverside. And after my 3-year term was up, I went back and interviewed with a number of law firms. And usually you do that through fellow classmates that set up, interviews. And everyone I spoke to, without exception, I would ask them, are they really enjoying their time being in a law firm? And most of them said, well, no, the work sucks, but the pay is good, and I have a chance of making partner after 6 or 7 years.
Yep.
And it was all things in the future that might come about, but I didn't find a single one that was really enjoying themselves in the practice of law. And so I said, heck, this doesn't sound right, because I'm having a ball. I was enjoying getting up and going to work every day, living in Southern California, had my own car and my own caseload. And so the idea of going back and doing something that was going to be a grind just for the future benefits didn't appeal to me, even though I knew I would never make a lot of money in the FBI. Back then, they actually make pretty good money nowadays. The salary was published when I started. The starting salary was $8,900 a year. So no, I wasn't going to get rich, but the draw was that I really enjoyed the independence that we had. You don't think of necessarily a government agency has given you independence, but we really did have a lot of independence in our ability to perform.
Hmm. You know, Mr. Ricks, it's funny. I deal with a lot of attorneys. I'm in software. I deal with accessibility, which Timmy can appreciate, and such. And I deal with a lot of attorneys, and one of the stories I always heard from attorneys, and it's funny how times have not changed. And this is going back to the '60s. You're talking about. I met an attorney, and apparently, when he had his first interview for a law firm, they said, "You're going to want to wake up every day and die for a year, but if you make it after a year." And you can at least get out of bed, then you know you can make it. And it's funny you say that because it seems to me that times haven't changed. I would love to go back to law school. Timmy knows this, just for the intellectual rigor of it and such. But on to you again, sir. You were a special agent in charge in Waco when the Branch Davidian compound, the situation in 1993. Is that right, sir?
Yeah, I was one of the agents in charge. I was not the agent in charge. We divide in the FBI our agents in charge by territory, and Waco fell within the territory of the San Antonio Division, and that was headed up by Special Agent in Charge Jeff Jamar. And when the assault by ATF occurred, the Attorney General made a decision that he wanted the FBI to take over to try to resolve this thing peacefully if possible. And so Jeff Jamar was put in charge, and they asked him if he needed others to come in and to give him assistance. So he asked for my help. Also, the agent from El Paso and the agent from New Orleans came in. So we were there to give him assistance in the operation. We divided up responsibilities, and I took on the negotiators and the press. I became the principal spokesperson for the FBI during this standoff.
Why don't you tell our listeners, if you would, sir, just give us a quick, 10,000-foot overview of what actually happened. I'm familiar with it, but I love history. And Mr. Ricks, I see you on television all the time, the History Channel and all these Netflix documentaries and such, so you're familiar to me. But if you would, maybe just give the audience just a quick recap of what happened with the Branch Davidians and the 51-day siege.
Boy, hard to do a quick recap.
Yeah. Take your time. You have carte blanche, sir. Take your time.
I was down there for 52 days with so many subplots and major plots. But in essence, what happened was the ATF was called because there were grenades that had been shipped in the mail, and a box had broken open, and they got called by the mail service that these grenades were being shipped to this group called the Branch Davidians. And the Branch Davidians were actually not in Waco, even though everyone says that, because it rhymed with the Waco from Waco, so it made a good story.
Yeah.
But in effect, they lived in an area called Elk, Texas, which is about 3 or 4 miles north of Waco. And they had a compound there that consisted of approximately 70 acres of land. And they were an offshoot of a group called the Branch, which came in the late 40s, early 50s from California. All our good cults originate in California.
You and Timmy will get along, sir.
I agree on that one.
Right. And so this was no exception. The fellow that started it, it was an offshoot of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which also has a firm belief in end times studies and predictions that the world was going to end. In fact, they were featured during the 50s. They had, at that time, a female leader who predicted the world was going to end, so the Davidians from all around the world came in to celebrate the end of the world, and it didn't happen. So that put a kink in their recruitment efforts, but they reestablished themselves. They had different battles for control of the sect, and eventually it was taken over by a gentleman by the name of David Koresh, even though his real name was Vernon Howe. Vernon Howe took on the name of David Koresh because the name of David from King David, and and Koresh was another term that he pulled from the Bible. And he, over time, he would philosophize and theorize and preach about the meaning, and he focused on what was called the seven seals of the book of Revelations. And in the book of Revelations, when you talk about the seven seals, it basically says that only Christ can open up the seals. Mm-hmm. So as he as he put it, open up the seals, he had his own people declare that he was Christ. He initially did not call himself Christ, but he let his followers declare that he in fact was the Christ, the Son of the living God. And as a result, this gave him great power over everyone within that community. They eventually had to give up their wives to him. He was the only one allowed to have sex inside the community. He was the only one that was allowed to smoke. He was the only one allowed to drink liquor. So he really had a pretty good gig going there for a while. But part of his end time philosophy was that there was going to be this great battle that would take place and would end up opening the final seals leading to the end of the world, and that there would be this magnificent standoff between the Davidians and the government, and there would be a fight to the death, and this would open the final seal, and then the end of the world would come. But what occurred was, because of the finding of the grenades by ATF, they got a search warrant to go into the Branch Davidian compound. And they also had learned that there were multiple weapons in there that had been converted to automatic weaponry. They had taken like regular AR-15s and had converted them to automatic weapons. So the search was for grenades, automatic weapons, and things of that nature. Now, to put it in perspective, was this a good idea? It's probably one of the dumbest things that law enforcement has ever done.
Oh, you're talking about the going ins, or that? I just want to clarify, was this a good idea?
Yeah.
I mean, for the law enforcement to go in? Okay. Yeah.
For law enforcement to go in for basic property crimes where they knew they were going to put not only their lives, but the lives of the people inside at risk was beyond comprehension. And why they decided to do that, I have my own theories. I think it was nearing budget time. ATF has always been somewhat a little paranoid that they were going to be taken over. We had been offered, at least I know of 2 or 3 occasions, to take over the ATF, and they were always concerned with that.
You mean the FBI was offered, sir? Just to be clear.
Yes. Yeah, we were offered on multiple occasions to take it over. Mr. Hoover never wanted to do it because, one, the unpopularity of enforcing gun laws, but also because they have a lot of regulatory functions. And he always believed that we were not in the regulatory business, but we were in the law enforcement business. So he did not think the two were compatible. But in anyway, they made a horrible decision to go in, and as a result of trying to execute those search warrants, they had 4 ATF agents that were killed that day, 16 wounded. They had 5 Branch Davidians that were killed, and multiple people, we don't even know how many, were wounded inside. So right now, we get a call and saying that we're going to be taking over. We'll be taking over the operation, the standoff, to try to resolve this thing. But we have now 9 dead people. We have murders of federal agents. So it's not some peaceful standoff that we can just walk away from. We have a situation that is really a dire circumstance that there are not a lot of good options that are available.
So I'm curious, as a spokesperson when this is all going on, I'm terrible at taking orders. I'm wondering how
you don't say, Tim.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have been very good in the FBI, I'm afraid.
No.
No.
So how does that shake out? Because clearly there's things you want to share because it may leak back to the people inside. There's things you can't share. Like how does it work being a spokesperson in such a tough situation?
Well, what I did every day was I spent all my day with the negotiators and listening to all the conversations that were taking place. And before I would go do the press conference, I would sit with the negotiators and say, okay, what is the point that we're trying to advance today? Some days we were trying to become friends with the people inside. Other days we were trying to be more stern and more forceful. So I viewed the press conference as an extension of the negotiations themselves, and would never do anything that would interfere with the negotiating process.
So you were saying that the spokesperson role was an extension of the negotiation, or at least needed to be in line with it. Is that how you're saying it?
Yeah, that's the way I viewed it. Now we had I think I tried to count at one point how many national press conferences I did, and I think it came out to like 33, and we were down there for 52 days. So I didn't do them all, and sometimes others they asked to go do press conferences, and I wouldn't say that they necessarily reflected the same approach that I did.
Okay.
We also had ATF that participated initially in the press conferences. We had certain rules that we applied, and we told them if they violated those rules that we would no longer let them be part of the press conferences. And of course, they immediately violated them, and I had to remove them from the press conferences. I think it was still part of that paranoia that they had of that was historic, and they would unfortunately leak a lot of material. We had an agreement that the only information that would be going to the public would be through the press conferences themselves, so it would be unified. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting up one morning and I'm got the TV show, and I think their ATF is on the Today Show. I said, that's not exactly what we agreed to.
We didn't talk about that, did we?
No. And they're telling a story that I had not heard, so that was interesting. But anyway, that's just a sidebar there that was an irritant that we had. But in most cases, we got along pretty well. But again, this went on for 51 days total. That the standoff itself took place.
To that end, Mr. Ricks, question for you.
Yeah.
The decisions made on April 19th, and for history buffs, myself included, April 19th is now sort of lives in infamy, as it were. The decision was made by higher ups in the government to ultimately breach, I suppose is the correct answer. I'm not asking you to play Monday morning quarterback. You said you didn't agree with the warrant in the first place. What was your feelings about the decision to breach on April 19th? Because obviously there's a direct line, as many people see it, from what happened in Waco to, unfortunately, the lives that were lost 2 years later to the day in Oklahoma City. What was your feeling at that time? Or were you in support of ultimately going in and breaching? Because other people other federal officers died that day as well.
No other federal officers died that day.
Oh, I beg your pardon. On the 19th they didn't? I'm sorry about that.
No, not on that day. Obviously in Oklahoma City
Right.
They did. But
yeah.
At the time, the plan was to insert tear gas into the compound, which is somewhere in the United States today, some police department is inserting tear gas. It's a common practice. It's non-lethal. So it was. We were at a situation where all of our experts, and we had experts throughout the whole country that we were using, not just FBI experts, but we called in every expert we could, from psycholinguistics experts to people doing psychological profiles. They all came to the conclusion that David Koresh was ready to bring this down to a magnificent, they called it in quotes, a magnificent end. And that the only way that we could interrupt that was by some form of tactical intervention, that he was on his own plan, and that if we did not do something to interrupt that, he was going to put that plan into effect so he would be under control. We could not go in and do an armed assault without the loss of many, many lives on probably both sides. They had over 2 million rounds of ammunition in there, hundreds, if not more than that, weaponry, many, many automatics. They had 50 caliber weapons that could penetrate a lot of different armaments. So it would be a suicide mission, much like ATF's, if we did an armed assault. So the final conclusion was, well, we won't do an armed assault, and we will not assault the compound itself, but we will insert tear gas, hopeful that the mothers would want to take care of their children, and at least they would come out. Mm-hmm. So the whole plan was trying to make it so uncomfortable in there that people would be forced out. What we did not know, but we later learned from different recordings, was as soon as we made the first insertion of tear gas, and it was a non-pyrotechnic form of tear gas. It actually was a form of capsaicin powder that would not ignite, but they had began, like we say, learned later, from the very beginning, they began to pour fuel oil throughout the compound. 3 major locations.
Branch Davidians, right, sir?
The Branch Davidians.
Yeah, it wasn't the FBI, which has been the contention of conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have my own theories as, what caused them to ultimately light it up, as they put it. We did approximately at noon. The wind was blowing, as typical in Texas. It was blowing about 40 miles an hour. And the thing was shoddily built, which there were gaps in the construction itself, and the wind would just whirl through. And as a result, they really weren't affected that much by the tear gas. In fact, some of them we later heard in recordings that we picked up afterward were that, have they even inserted the tear gas yet? Because we told them we were going to insert it. And we'd been inserting it for hours. Many of them had held up in a concrete interior structure that was protected from the tear gas. So our HRT, our hostage rescue team people, asked for permission to penetrate the front door area where this concrete enclosed room was, and where many were believed held up there. And so the combat engineering vehicle that was used to insert the tear gas made an insertion through the front door.
I remember that famous scene on television. Yeah.
Yeah, from what we can gather is they thought that this was the beginning of the assault.
Oh.
They thought we were going to assault the place all along and were ready to attack. And as soon as that incursion occurred, that's when the order went out to light it up. And so simultaneously in 3 separate locations, fires were lit inside the compound. And within a matter of 10 minutes, it was completely consumed in one major conflagration that people were asking, well, how come we didn't immediately send the fire department? First off, fire department said they weren't going to go, not when people are going to be shooting at them. Right. Fire departments don't go into situations like that until law enforcement clears it out and makes it safe. But secondly, there's no way a fire department could have done anything about that fire.
Oh, really?
It was a tinder box, and it immediately just was consumed in flames, and there was no way that you would have any effect on a fire of that nature. But back again, the assistant director and executive assistant directors had flown to Waco a few days before that, and went one by one to the people that were there and asked them, did they agree with this plan to insert tear gas? And there was not one negative response. Now, I still, to this day, have second thoughts about. I agreed to that. There's no doubt about that. But back in the back of my mind, I really didn't think it would be effective, and I never did, because I don't think some people grasp how committed these people were. Many looked at them like they were criminals and thought they would react like criminals. Criminals will usually say, I'm going to fight it till the end. You'll never take me alive. We throw the tear gas in and they come running out. So I think there was some of that thought there that these are going to be like typical criminals. They were not. They'd given their lives, their wives, all of their money, dedicated to this one man, and to believe that their salvation depended on their support of this one man. So it was a total 100% commitment that most had in there. Now, some did not. Some wanted to come out. They were either executed or beaten to death. Many were stabbed. Many were shot. Some were beaten to death.
When was this happening, sir? Was this as the fire?
This was while we were doing the tear gassing, and when the fire occurred. Many wanted to come out.
And there were
a number of them that. Yeah. Pardon me. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just thinking out loud. I was not familiar with this. This is new to me. That these people were executed or beaten to death.
Yeah.
Largely, I suppose, from the viewpoint of David Koresh as being traitors.
Yeah. David Koresh was shot with a rifle between his eyes.
Wow.
Now, it was ruled that it was a suicide, which I disagreed with. I've never seen somebody take a rifle and shoot themselves between the eyes in a suicide. There are a lot of easier ways to do it.
Right.
But his second in command also then executed himself. His second in command was a gentleman by the name of Steve Snyder, who was a pastor in Hawaii, and he had given up his wife to David Koresh and given up everything he had to David Koresh. I always believed, and a lot of our negotiators believed, that David would love to have had everybody in there die, and that he would come out alive as being hailed as the hero, that everyone was willing to sacrifice their lives for him. I believe something like that may have occurred. Somewhat like Jim Jones. I put a lot of similarities between this and Jim Jones. I don't know if you recall that situation.
Oh yeah.
But I worked a part of that case. I had to go out and serve search warrants out in L.A. because we found FBI documents down in Jonestown. Mm-hmm. But in Jim Jones's case, after everybody had killed themselves, the plebeians. He then said, okay, now it's time for us to get out of here. And his mighty men, as he called them, he said, not so fast.
So that they know that.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And I always suspected that something like this might occur with David Koresh, where after everybody had sacrificed for him, that then he would come out himself. But I always believed that Steve Snyder shot him. Right between the eyes, and then took his own life.
So that's the first part of our interview with Bob Ricks. More to come next week. I always find it fascinating how, for example, David Koresh, the thought was he might not want to go down with his ship.
Well, they always chicken out in the end.
We see that, don't we?
That's the surprising
right?
part of the interview to me. They always chicken out in the end.
The rules don't apply to me. You look around, right? That's a common failing.
And it happened at Jamestown too, right?
Yeah.
With Jim Jones. Yeah. So, no, they always chicken out at the end. And that was a fascinating part of the interview where he talked about it was suspected that he was killed by his number two. So, yeah, right in the face too. So, yeah. But next week we will touch on the Oklahoma City aspect, which again I can talk about for hours. Hard to believe it's the 30th anniversary, but I have said this to Mr. Ricks, and I will say it again on the air, which is this country owes people such as he a debt of gratitude that shall never be repaid. But I am going to repay him with some of my nuts and sweet treats. So hopefully he likes that jerky. So
Yeah. Should we plug it? Westchester Nuts and Treats, folks. We'll put it in the show notes.
we can plug it. That was not my intention. But as it happens, just as an aside, I'm in another store here in Westchester. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. Little side gig, like kind of some fun. So.
Yeah.
Well, Timmy, have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy Labor Day. Look forward to part 2 next week. And this is John Bolin signing off saying, hey, misbehave, drive fast, take chances. And this is Tim saying, if everybody likes what you're doing, you're probably not doing anything worthwhile. Take care out there.